Welcome to episode number 20 of the Introvert Biz Growth Podcast, the show where I talk to introverts who grow their business and make a difference. I'm Sarah Zenekroce and thrilled that you're spending this precious time of yours with me today. Today I'm talking to Kelly Exeter. Kelly Exeter is the ultimate slashy writer / editor / designer / business owner. She's also a compulsive striver and is constantly trying to find the balance between achieving the big goals she sets for herself while also being present for her family. Hi, Kelly. How are you today?
Hey, Sarah. I'm great. Thanks so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming on the call. It's always a pleasure when I have an Australian guest again.
Yeah.
I can't believe that, I'm in Switzerland and I'm talking to you in Australia.
It's amazing.
And it's really funny because we have friends who are in Sydney right now. They just posted a Facebook Live video yesterday of a Coldplay concert.
Yeah.
It's really funny how, you guys have summer and we're here in the cold.
And it's been really, really hot in Sydney this week as well. They've been sweltering. So it must be weird you guys going, but is it snowing in Switzerland at the moment?
We're all kind of waiting for the snow. Usually it doesn't come anymore before Christmas. If we're lucky after Christmas, like the week after, but with global warming and all, it's kind of like delayed more and more, it seems.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, besides your official bio that I just read in the intro, Kelly, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, more kind of from a personal point, into something that my introverted audience can relate to maybe?
Or just in general, I'm a 39-year-old female, obviously. I'm married with 2 kids. I've got a 7 and a feisty 3-year-old, which is really challenging for me. She's the only extrovert in the house, actually. So my husband, my son and I just kind of look at her sometimes and go, what are you doing? And interestingly, it's a challenge parenting her, but it's also, I'm quite proud of how I parent her, because growing up as an introvert with a very extroverted mum, I was always getting the message that, I needed to get my nose out of that book, or I needed to be more social, or I needed to do this and that. And so with my daughter, I catch myself kind of wanting to say to her, oh gosh, can't you just be quiet, or can't you just sit still for 3 seconds? And then I go, hang on a minute, you're just doing what my mum did to me, which is, my mum loved me and I love my mum, but, I did grow up with that kind of negative message around who I was, and I don't want to give my daughter that, but in the reverse. So it's interesting to me how, identifying with my introversion and identifying with it and the self-acceptance that came with that has made me a better parent to my extroverted daughter. So
yeah, it's interesting because I would say the firstborn is definitely a big introvert. The second one, we're not sure yet, but even challenging with my firstborn because he's much more introverted than me. And as a parent, I find it still challenging because I always feel like, I feel kind of sad for him that he only has this one good friend. And I think society just kind of, gives us that message saying, well, kids should have lots of friends. And so even though I'm definitely introverted myself, I still find it challenging as a parent to see your kid kind of, being very quiet and just alone all the time. So I totally understand your mom. And I think back then we probably also didn't have enough resources like nowadays. There's all these articles and it's everywhere, and so we as parents, I think we have more information to learn about our kids and find out whether they're introverted or extroverted. So I think we back then they just didn't have all this information as well.
Yeah, we didn't have the language back then. Certainly we just thought it was just a certain way that I think the thing with the introversion, as you say, is it looks unsocial and it looks like your kid's got no friends, and we as parents, we freak out a bit at that. And I think that's certainly what my mum was doing. But yeah, I kind of look back as a kid and I didn't have a lot of friends, but it actually didn't bother me. It bothered me at school, but it didn't bother me at home that I didn't have people to come over all the time because I was quite happy just doing my own thing. But it did bother my parents. And yeah, it's interesting now. My son, who's introverted, he's a very social introvert though, and he makes friends very easily. So he kind of got the best of both worlds with him.
It's nice. Maybe he's an ambivert. That's
yes, yeah.
In between. Excellent. Well, tell us a little bit about your business then. How do you make a difference in people's lives?
Yes, I'm across a few different things. So I'm a graphic designer by trade. I actually studied sports science at uni, interestingly, because I love sport and I thought that that's the arena that I wanted to work in. And yeah, in the end, I kind of came to realize as much as I loved sport and fitness and leisure, I didn't really want to work in that industry. It was kind of really funny hours. And I'd always had an interest in graphic design. I'd always kind of done things, I was self-taught in a lot of programs, and one of my best friends is a graphic designer. And so kind of the opportunity came for me to retrain early in my 20s, and I did. And yeah, so I ended up becoming a graphic designer. I worked for a few years for someone else, and then I ended up going out on my own, started my own business 10 years ago. And yeah, so that's the primary source of my income now. So my husband's actually since taken over the running of that business because I got very burnt out running that business because it was fundamentally unsuited to my introversion more than anything else. And we'll probably talk about that later. But yeah, I got very burnt out with all the very heavy one-on-one interaction that was involved in running that business. Mm-hmm. So luckily my husband was able to step in, take over that side of things. And these days I am more in the background, doing the things I love, which is writing, creating content, doing design, and he takes care of, all the heavy client interaction and stuff. In addition to that, I'm also the editor of a large business website in Australia. And I write as well. I write books, and so I make money from my books, and I also make money from speaking. So I've got a bit of a diverse income portfolio, but the majority of it is from my design business.
Right. Yeah, it's funny how you kind of just casually throw in there, I write books. Book, but you have 3 books, right?
Yes, yeah, I do. I've got the first one I wrote a couple of years ago that was called Your Best Year Ever. Mm-hmm. And this year I released 2 books. So one called Practical Perfection, and then this year I also released my first business book, which is called 20 Simple Shortcuts to Small Business Success. But yeah, book writing is really what I want to be doing full-time if I can one day, and that's what I'm working towards. But in the meantime, I'm just trying to produce as many books as I can until such a time as it can fund me writing full-time, and whether that ever happens, who knows, but that's the goal.
Are they available on Amazon, or do you sell them through your website?
Yeah, so they're all available on Amazon. So if people go to kellyexeter.com.au, they'll see the books there. And then if you click on each one, it kind of gives you all the various options for buying it, whether it's all the various Amazon stores, because there's like a bazillion Amazon stores now. It's not just one. And so people in Australia, I usually encourage them to buy them from my site. But anyone who's overseas, they're all available in paperback and as ebooks on Amazon.
Wonderful. So we'll make sure to put the links in the show notes. All right, great. So very diverse kind of income or business model. So you have your husband running so I imagine he works like with one-on-one clients for design projects, right? So that's kind of the traditional business model, if you want. And then
that's right.
Over kind of more the new age business model where you basically write and get paid for it. And then, of course, so that's good. And
I also do, it's funny, we had a meeting with someone, we're bringing someone new into the business, and we had a meeting with them today. And my husband said, I'm the one that, he's the old school, like one-on-one client meetings and doing that side of things. And I'm the online, I do a lot of interaction online and a lot of networking online with people. And I have quite a extensive network built up now from being able to network online. And yeah, so he leverages the kind of old school things. I leverage the new school things, and they come together really well, actually.
Nice. Before you said, you're an introverted family except for your daughter. So your husband, you would say he's also more introverted. So how did he manage that energy that he has to put into one-on-one meetings? He's okay with it?
Yeah, he's definitely probably more, if there's such a thing as a true ambivert, he's definitely one of those. So he does fall on the introverted side of the scale, but I'm quite an extreme introvert. Like, I'm right down the end of the spectrum, whereas he's much more to the center. So he's got a much better ability for coping with that one-on-one interaction. He doesn't need as much recharge time as I seem to. So yeah, it's good.
That's interesting how you could balance that out within the couple. That's great.
It was quite handy. Yeah, I picked him well.
Let's talk about your introverted, I call them the introverted superpowers. What would you think is your biggest strength as an introverted entrepreneur?
I think probably my biggest strength is also my biggest weakness. So my biggest strength is my ability to read people. And I think because I'm willing to sit back and really observe, and I see a lot of the things that aren't being said. So, there's often a difference between what someone's actually telling you and what they're actually feeling, or and that what they're not telling you is often as important as what they are telling you. So I think I've got quite a strong ability to see what it is people aren't telling me and able to read them. So people do tend to feel that I get them quite well. Yeah. But there's a flip side to that. And I think it also ends up being my greatest weakness because I take it too far. I end up wanting to mind read people. And I often spend so much time in a conversation trying to be one step ahead of the person I'm talking to so that they feel like I get them. I kind of forget to participate actively in the conversation. And that's something I'm very aware of that I do. And I'm kind of working really hard on it at the moment to be more of an active participant in the conversation rather than trying to be that one step ahead of the person I'm talking to all the time.
That's interesting. Does it happen to you that so once the conversation is finished, that you then have these talks in your head and go, she said this, but what if she actually meant this? And
it's the overthinking. Yeah, overthinking is another thing I've worked really, really hard on this past year because I definitely used to be that person that I would replay every bit of the conversation in my head, and I'd not just replay the conversation, but I'd replay the looks on their face and if they paused in a funny place and what did that pause mean? And did that mean that I should have said this instead of that? And I've replayed conversations for, months after I've had them. And it's something I've really had to and again, it's if I am more of an active participant in the conversation, I'm less likely to replay that conversation over and over in my head and wonder which bits I got wrong. So it's all kind of a work in progress at the moment.
Okay. I've started meditating about 6 months ago. I can already see that there's definitely benefits to meditation for that kind of issue or challenge because it teaches you to just step back and not spend too much time rethinking everything, but just accept things the way they are. I'm not completely there yet. But it definitely helps because like you said before, you are aware of this challenge. And I think that's the first step is awareness, right? So.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, interestingly, I've never ever gotten meditation. I've had so many people tell me to have a go at it. But finally this year, one of my podcast co-hosts, she's very into meditation and because I always felt like I was doing it wrong and I thought that you had to clear your head when you're meditating. Like the whole idea of it is to just have an empty head. And I was always a bit frustrated that I couldn't empty my head. And she said, no, all it is the thoughts float into your head and you just don't engage with them. They float in and then they float out. And that's been the major, major breakthrough for me with regard to overthinking is this revelation that just because a thought enters your head, Kelly, that doesn't mean you have to engage with it. You don't have to chat with it. You don't have to talk to it. You don't have to go back and forth with it. Like, you can literally let it come in and just let it keep going without doing anything with it. And that for me has just been massive this year.
Yeah, same here. It looks like I don't know, maybe it's the communication around meditation that has been wrong for so many years. I had the same idea. It's like, oh, you just sit there and try to think of nothing. Well, that's not.
Yeah, that's right.
And obviously, even today, after 6 months, it's not working. You can't just not think of anything. But the fact to realize that that's okay, I'm like, oh, wow, okay. And actually now I start to realize, drifted off, and then come back, and drifted off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, I think we just talked about your biggest aha moment. At least that was one of them. So is to realize, meditation doesn't help with the being present and not being always too much in your head. Can you think of another big moment that you realized something big in your business or life?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is, I know it's not necessarily having to relate to introversion, but my aha moment definitely does. And that was when we did some Myers-Briggs profiling, personality testing at work with our staff, so that we could all understand each other better. And it's funny because I always knew I was an introvert, but to me, introvert meant just someone who's really quiet and socially awkward. And yeah, that was my definition of an introvert, someone who's very uncool. And it was when we did that personality profiling that I found out that no, it's got nothing to do with any of that. Like the social awkwardness, that's shyness, and that's something completely different. Introversion is an energy thing. And yeah, once I had that revelation, that's when I realized, because at that point in time, I was the person still doing all the client meetings. So all my whole day was interacting one-on-one with clients, talking to suppliers, interacting one-on-one with my staff. We were all there was 5 of us in a big open plan office. And it was, and I was just getting home every afternoon from work completely shattered. And then, I had a husband and child at home who wanted me to interact with them, and I just had nothing left to give them. And and then I would feel angry at myself for not having anything, not being able to engage with my loved ones in the way that I wanted to. And so it was when we did that personality profiling, I was like, wow, this is why I'm so exhausted at the end of each day, because this thing that I'm spending my whole day doing something that's very draining for me. And yeah, that's why I've got nothing left to give at the end of the day. And I don't have anything left to give to myself either. So that kind of set off a chain of events that eventually led to my husband taking over the business, and led to me taking I started working from home a few days a week. So I'd have 9 hours where I didn't have to talk to anybody. I could just sit at my computer and do whatever I had to do. And I just, those days where I was at home by myself, like my husband and child would come home at the end of that day, and I would just be so full of energy and so excited to see them, and just this completely different person who was just dragging herself through every day. So yeah, that was certainly the aha moment for me. But the other reason it was a big aha moment was from a self-acceptance point of view. So I mentioned this at the start, that I kind of grew up thinking that this introversion, this quiet nature that I had, was a personality flaw that needed to be corrected. And I had spent pretty much my whole life, deep into my 30s, feeling like I need to be more extroverted, I need to be more sociable, I need to go, be more willing to go to parties and more willing to talk to people and go to conferences and do all these hardcore things that extroverts thrive in, these environments that extroverts thrive in, but I didn't. And I was trying to make myself thrive in these environments that I was fundamentally unsuited for. So from a self-acceptance point of view, doing that Myers-Briggs profiling was amazing, because I was like, hey, it's okay to be me. Yeah. It's okay to have this quiet nature. There are strengths associated with that quiet nature. I can leverage those strengths. And then these things that are draining for me, I can just be a bit more judicious in choosing which of those things to do, but I don't have to do them all. And I certainly don't have to try and make myself into something that I'm just not. So that was just a massive revelation for me.
So true. I think I always knew as well that I was more quiet. And again, in Europe, I've had this conversation before with Beth Bulow, is in Europe, there's not that much social pressure, I think, to be an extrovert.
Yeah, right.
I have this theory that I told Beth that I think all the extroverts left to the US and maybe Australia, who knows?
Yeah.
Just a bunch of introverts in Europe, which of course is exaggerated, but it's definitely more socially accepted to be quiet over here, and which is one of the reasons why I'm glad my kids are growing up here and not in the US, because I think even though now that there's kind of no more information about it, it's still, and it will be for a long time, I think, more pressure on introverts to be more outgoing and stuff. So
I think it's more difficult to be heard in the more extroverted countries when you are an introvert. So even though there is definitely that acceptance and that understanding of it, I think there's still that real unconscious bias deep inside where people are like, well, that's all well and good that you're quiet, but I'm still going to let the loud, more outgoing person talk over the top of you and not let you be heard. So, and I know I'm stereotyping there, but I don't think any extroverts are listening to this podcast.
Well, maybe good.
Who knows?
Excellent. Well, let's switch gears a bit, and I want to talk about 3 golden nuggets. So those are resources, books, and personal habits that you want to share with the audience. So the first one is a personal habit that you think contributes to your success.
Yeah, so the habit that most contributes to my success, I think, is my love of routines. And I know a lot of people see routines as restrictive or boring, but I see them as quite freeing, because what my routines allow me to do is they allow me to think less. So I've got routines for in the morning when I get up at 4:15 in the morning, which is just something I do to ensure I get time to myself every day. I've got 2 kids. I need quiet to write, and writing is something I have to do every day to feel myself. So I get up at 4:15 so I can do that. And I go to bed very early as well. So that's the flip side of that. But yeah, I've got my morning writing routine, my morning exercise routine. I've got the routine for before school. I've got the routine for when I get home from the school drop off and I'm ready to work. I've got the evening routine. And all these routines free up headspace. And because they free up headspace for me, they allow me to be more creative and to have more downtime in my head. So yeah, I just think that having routines and having things that allow you to kind of work on autopilot for a large chunk of your day and not have to think, oh gosh, where are my socks? Or, oh no, I haven't made my son's school lunch yet. Why, quick, let's do that. Like, our mornings tend to be very smooth and chilled out because we've got these routines in place. Everybody knows what they have to do. Everybody knows when they need to do it by. So everybody just does it, and it just makes life easier and happier. And yeah, I can say with certainty that it directly contributes to any success that I have. The fact that I set aside this time every day to write. People go, how do you write books when you've got these kids and you've got all these other things going on? And that's the answer. I set aside time to write every morning. So yeah,
it's your routines. Yeah, I think though what's important is that you have these routines, but then your writing is very creative. Like if somebody asked you to write the same thing every day, or just like for the same topic every day, you'd probably get bored as well, right? So it's more maybe the life routines. But
yes,
I think I have on my LinkedIn profile, it says something like routines bore me. But while you were talking, I'm like, yeah, I like routines like that as well. But in my work, I don't want to do the same thing all the time, right?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And there's definitely a difference. Like I think it's important for routines, things that you can just easily execute every day. And the important thing about them is that they free up headspace for you to just chill out, or because we can't, especially if you're creative people, we can't be creative if we don't have space, literal space, and also just headspace as well. It's very difficult.
Totally agree. After 7 weeks of summer vacation, I cannot wait to get back to it.
Oh man, we're just about to start that next week, so that is going to be. I really struggle during school holidays. I struggle because I don't get the long periods of time where I'm just by myself that I kind of need, and also it's everything is a bit out of whack because it's out of routine. So yes, I'm just about to start that, so I feel your pain.
Yeah. Great. What about an internet resource or some kind of app or tool that you use on a regular basis?
We use Slack. So Slack is a communication tool. We've got quite a large team now, and we've got internally in the office, but then we've got a team of people in the Philippines as well. And I just love Slack because it just makes communication within the team very easy. And also I have Slack with my flying solo team as well, which is an external role that I have. And it's a really nice communication tool. It makes you feel like you're part of something, and you can quickly and easily chat with people, but you're not having to do it like, you're not having to call them up, or you're not having to send them an email. You can just send them a quick message. So Slack's definitely one of my favorite communication tools.
Wow. Okay. I think I have to look back into that because you're about the third person to mention.
Yeah, it's good. I do love it.
What about a book that you would recommend to the Introvert Biz Growth audience, and why?
Gosh, I read a lot. I read a lot of books. I was like, what one book could I recommend? And actually, this is one that I read really recently and was really interesting. It's by Rolf Dobelli, who's actually a European writer. So I think the book's been translated into English, and the book's called The Art of Thinking Clearly. And it's such an interesting read because it talks about all the unconscious biases that we outsource our decision making to. And it just shows how there's a lot of things that we do unconsciously that we should be doing a bit more consciously, if you know what I mean. So it was just a really, really interesting read. I think there's like 100 or something of these unconscious biases in this book. And it's fascinating because I'm fascinated with how the human mind works and what makes people think the way that they think. And this book, I just found it answered a lot of questions in that regard.
Nice. Can you say the name of the author again?
Yes, it's Rolf, R-O-L-F, Dobelli, so D-O-B-E-L-L-I.
Okay, great. I'll make sure to put the link in the show notes, and I think I'll download it tonight because I'm very intrigued.
Well, it says on the front it's a million copy bestseller. I think he's sold a lot of this book, so I think and I can see why. Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Kelly. This has been a great conversation. I think we do have a lot of things in common in terms of child management and finding our time and all of that. So it was wonderful. I always end the conversation with kind of a mindful ending, and want to ask you what you're grateful for today or this week or this season.
Yeah, I'm grateful for a lot of things right now. Because I have been practicing kind of being a bit more mindful and appreciating the really, really small things. But I have to say that this time last year, through kind of a few things that were not really in our control, my business, or my husband and my business, was in a place of great uncertainty. And I don't like uncertainty because it makes me very anxious and it's very triggering. But now, a year later, we're not only in a place of greater certainty, but we're in a position to be very proactive. And we had a meeting with someone today who's going to help us take some really proactive steps towards growing our business and making it better next year. And yeah, so that's the thing that just today I'm very, very grateful for being in a position of certainty and for being in a position to, just be a bit more proactive, because I feel like I've had a very reactive last few years. So being on the front foot instead of constantly fending things off and dealing with stuff is just a lovely place to be.
That's great. I'm very happy for you too. You can find Kelly at kellyexeter.com.au or on Facebook at facebook.com/Kelly Exeter. That's it for this episode of the Introvert Biz Growth Podcast. You'll find this episode's show notes at sarahsenacroce.com/episode 20. And as always, if you don't have it yet, get your free 4-step guide on how to say no to grow. This guide includes some very handy email templates that you can send out to the people who ask you for your time or want to pick your brain or want to involve you in yet another project. So it really comes in very handy because you can just copy paste those email templates and, adjust them a bit to your own style, but don't have to sit in front of your computer anymore for hours and think, how do I just get out of this? How do I say no to this person? So come and download it at sarahsenacroce.com. And again, I know I've been repeating myself, and as an introvert, this is one of the things I'm really struggling with is asking for help. And maybe you have the same thing in your business. But as you know, this podcast is costing me some time and money. I don't do the editing myself. That would just take me too much time, and it's very techy. So I do have to pay an editor to do that. So if you feel like you want to just make the tiniest commitment and help me covering the costs of this podcast, I would really, really appreciate it. You can do that at sarahsenacroce.com/Patreon. That's Patreon, where you can just simply make a monthly pledge. Can be as little as 50 cents per episode. And that would really make my day. So I'll talk to you again in 2 weeks. And I know it seems long, but as my virtual assistant always says, who helps me with the show notes, is like these 2 weeks just always fly by. So I know time flies, but pre-excitement is half the experience. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.